Greeks were intellectual. They were people that were advanced cognitively. They had great minds. They were architects and philosophers. Many scholars refer to her as the Syrophoenician woman. She lived in the Middle East and Lebanon, which was a part of the Roman province of Syria, which also included all of Palestine and Perea and Judah and the other regions. She was from one of the 7 nations driven out of the land of Canaan in the Old Testament. Her people worshiped idol gods. They sacrificed children, and they did all other kinds of ungodly things. They were pagans. This woman was a pagan. And her people, the Canaanites and the Jews, were bitter enemies. As a matter of fact, they were ancestral enemies. They just didn't get along. The Jews disliked them so much that the Jews would sometimes call them dogs and consider them to be unclean. So the Jews and the Canaanites, they hated each other. And Jesus here in this text is in the house with the disciples, having a meeting or teaching them. And in comes this Canaanite woman, this Greek woman, this mixed breed. This sister comes in and she interrupts the meeting that Jesus is having with the disciples. I believe that this sister teaches us how to operate in obscurity. When things are obscured, we don't understand. We don't really know what's going on. Times are dark. It's a time, if we're honest about it, even when our revelation from God is not clear. We're not certain about what God is saying or how he's leading or how he's guiding us. We don't know what to do when things are obscured. Frankie Beverly and Mays sung about this. These times they called it joy and pain, sunshine and rain. 1 minute you laughing, 1 minute you crying. Life is dark and cloudy. You're confused. We live in a life in a world where life is ambiguous. Sometimes we don't have the answer. No matter how good we look, no matter whether we're wearing Casper or St. John, we don't have the answer. Sometimes we don't know what to do, which way to turn. But the various roles that we play as mothers, as preachers, as ministers, as executives, as house moms, the very roles that we play demands that we be able to operate even when things are obscure. They demand that we be able to keep on keeping on in spite of the pain, whether the pain is emotional, whether the pain is physical. I remember when I was in the middle of a battle with cancer. Cancer was getting the best of me. I was 65 pounds. Cancer had taken away my Coca-Cola bottle figure and took me down to a Pepsi Light. Oh, but bless God, I'm pushing 2 liters now. But I remember being so sick that I couldn't hardly get up out the bed. But every morning I would have to get up and act like I was okay because I needed my children to go to school and focus on their education and not be worried about me being homesick. So the very role that we play in life makes it mandatory that we be able to operate in obscurity, that we be able to operate when things are not going right. Especially if you are in ministry, if you are a minister or God has called and anointed and set you apart for his work, people's lives depend on you being able to operate when things are obscure. As a matter of fact, souls depend on you being able to operate when things are obscured. When your heart is broken, you can't show up at work whining and complaining about your broken heart because good church folk gonna want to know where your God at now. You just was talking all that noise about your God. It's kind of what Joshua told Ephraim and Manasseh. He said, you are great people. You talking all this talk. You want more land. Go up and take it for yourself. So sometimes life hurts us, ladies. I didn't come here for church as usual tonight. I came here to allow the Lord to bless somebody through me tonight. So I'm going to press you tonight. I'm probably going to pull and dig up some stuff that's going to make your Mary Kay run a little bit. Or maybe you got on some of that good stuff that ain't going to run. But my prayer is tonight that when you leave here, you will look and feel different than you were when you came. This woman operates in obscurity. I believe she teaches us 3 simple principles of how to operate in obscurity. First, we see that this woman is able to operate in spite of persistent problems. You say, what was her problems? Well, the first problem was her identity. She was from the wrong family. She was from a family of generational curses. Her DNA was tainted. Her family's history was filled with disdain. The Canaanites engaged in ritual prostitution, self-mutilation, and human sacrifices. Their societies were filled with incest, idolatry, and violence. And as a result of their immorality, God weighed them in the balance and found them wanting. The Canaanites were rejected. This woman was from the wrong family. And y'all know when folk know something about your mama and your daddy in them. Can I just talk like I need to talk amongst my family? When they know something about your mama and your daddy in them, they'll tag it to you with, you know who her mama was. You know who her daddy was. So you know it's in her. So she was from the wrong family. She was from a bad pedigree. That was her first problem. So her people were rejected. They were not the family of people that you was going to invite to your house for the 4th of July picnic. You didn't want her family there because they had too many issues. They had too much baggage. They had some incest in the family. Somebody know that Uncle so-and-so had gone with so-and-so. So she was from the wrong kind of family. The next problem that she had, her problems were persisting problems. She had a daughter that was demon-possessed. Her daughter wasn't sick. It was no doctor that could cure her daughter. I believe she probably had even gone to the priest and probably the psychic and the root people do, like some of y'all run down to Georgia to get that oil and that blue dust, you know, all that other, but I ain't talking about y'all. I'm just talking about, excuse me, I'm just talking about what I'm talking about. But I believe this woman had tried everything she could to heal her daughter. But her daughter was demon-possessed. She was being tormented by demons. Some of us got some bad children, but our children are bad because we use the law as an excuse not to whoop them. The Lord say don't abuse them, but it don't say you can't whoop them. I thank God I was raised by a grandma with a 3rd grade education. She didn't know nothing about nothing. All she knew was about Jesus, and she had another simple rule, and it went like this. When her right hand got tied, she used her left and anything else that she could pick up around her. But this woman couldn't whoop her daughter straight. Her daughter was demon-possessed. And she interrupts this meeting. And I believe Jesus was sitting there with the disciples, and I believe they had just started the meeting. And he began to call the roll, James, John, Andrew, Bartholomew. And this Canaanite woman interrupts. And she says, mercy, master, son of David. My daughter is cruelly afflicted by an evil spirit. She cries out for help. This sister just shows up at this meeting and puts herself on the itinerary. Oh, she had to be one of us, y'all. You don't have to invite us to the meeting. We gonna show up and you gonna let us talk when we get there, or we gonna turn it out anyway. But this sister was desperate. Her daughter had demons. She was from the wrong family. So she interrupts the meeting. And she asks Jesus to help her. And her problems keep persisting. They get worse. Because the text says Jesus in verse 23, it says he ignores her. It says, but he answered her not a word. So her rejection continues. Now, I've heard about Jesus on Lake Gennesaret. I've heard about how he's done all these other strange things, these healings. And now I'm here asking him for help for my daughter, and he ignores me. But this sister continues to operate in obscurity. Next, we see not only does she operate in spite of persistent problems, but she operates in spite of pitiful people. Verse 23 says the disciples came and urged